The New York Islanders have two new forwards, but where will they fit into the lineup? And an old friend has some good advice for Ilya Sorokin. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Gil Martin here, and welcome everybody to the Wednesday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. We've got a lot to discuss on today's show, but first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, send us an email to lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR, VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long, and it's great to talk a little Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. Training camp going to get underway later this week. By Thursday of this week, the players will be back on, will have reported. Things are going to start in earnest with the full training camp roster for the 2024-2025 NHL season. I'm excited. I love this time of year. Always optimism involved and excitement, the unknown. And look, we all know, coming into this past offseason that is now thankfully more or less behind us, the Islanders did not have a lot of cap room to add to this roster. That's just the bottom line, that unless Lou Lamoriello moved one or more of his veteran players out, the Islanders were going to be up against or over, as they are now technically, the salary cap. Lou did manage to add two new forwards to the mix, and those two players are going to be very important for the New York Islanders. The first, obviously, Anthony Duclair, the big free agent signing on July 1st, day one of free agency. He was there right away, signing with the team. And after that, well, you basically then had Maxim Tsyplakov, who they signed as a free agent from the KHL, and he will now join the Islanders. So the question now becomes, where do these guys fit into this lineup? And everydayers, you've heard me mention that the New York Islanders last year did not have six legitimate top six forwards on their roster. At most, they had four. And those four would be Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal, Brock Nelson, and Kyle Palmieri. Now, of course, you want six top six forwards, hence the term top six. Players who can, step in and provide offense. One or two of them should provide some physicality as well. You want these to generally be your most skilled players. And yet the Islanders spent the majority of last season having guys like Pierre Engvall, Anders Lee, Casey Cizikas, Hudson Fasching, all filling in at various times, Simon Holmstrom in the top six. And I think it was just reflected in the ultimate offensive production or relative lack thereof for the Islanders. The Islanders finished 22nd in the league in goals scored. And still made the playoffs, even though their goaltending and defense were not up to their usual standards last year due to injuries and inconsistent play. So now you've added Anthony Duclair, who is a legitimate top 6 NHL forward. Ideally, I still think he's a second line guy, but, Patrick Roy making the announcement that he believes Duclair is going to get the first opportunity to join the top line. Here's what Roy had to say earlier this week before the Islanders golf outing, the same time he essentially let the cat out of the bag with regard to Ilya Sorokin's surgery. Roy said, "I'm very happy to see Anthony join the team. He brings speed to our team. We'll try him at the beginning with Bo and Barzy and see how well it'll go from there." Well, that is going to be, I guess, the $64 million question, right? I mean, you really want to get, first of all, you really want to maximize Bo Horvat and Matthew Barzal, and you want to maximize your top line. Having Anthony Duclair there is obviously a great way to do it. Duclair, by the way, saying, "I'm just really excited, first and foremost. Obviously, going to free agency, I had a lot of decisions to make, and I just felt, looking at this lineup, I can fit in very easily." Duclair added, "I'm just looking forward to whoever I'm playing with, to build chemistry as fast as possible. That's my goal every year, just to get to know the guys on and off the ice, and in practice, that's where it starts." So, he also, Duclair, talked a little bit about Bo and Barzy. Asked about Bo Horvat. He's a real solid 200-foot player, a guy you can rely on, a guy I'm really excited to play with and learn from. Obviously, he's got those leadership skills, being a captain on a previous team, and a really good person all around. With regard to Barzal, a really exciting player, superstar in this league. Playing against him and seeing what he does night and night out, how much passion he has, and the compete level too. A lot of those superstar players really love to compete, and he's one of those guys. I'm really looking forward to playing with him. So overall, that's where Anthony Duclair is going to start training camp. Keep in mind, and we got to take everything the Islanders do with regard to line combinations with a grain of salt. Why? Because we have seen Patrick Roy mix and match lines mid-game with regularity. It's not like, the Islanders are kind of, behind a goal or two, and he'll start mixing and matching the lines. Yeah, he will, but very often the line combinations change mid-game. Sometimes it's due to injury. Sometimes it's due to a guy making a mistake, a power play, a penalty kill. But Patrick Roy does tend to like to experiment with his lines. But I think if you can get Bo, Barzy, and Duclair to be a good combination, you run the real possibility of bringing out, giving even more productivity to Bo and Barzy, and obviously to Duclair. Now, the other player being added to the lineup is Maxim Tsyplakov. And Tsyplakov, I think, is sort of the wild card in all this. Where does Tsyplakov end up? And a lot of it is going to depend on where the Islanders, how fast Tsyplakov adjusts to life in North America, both on and off the ice. And, again, narrower rink, different style of play, a little more physical here in the NHL. That is going to be a big question. And look, ideally, by the end of the season, I think if you have Brock Nelson Maxim Tsyplakov and Kyle Palmieri as your second line, and Tsyplakov is ready for, to be a top 6 NHL forward, and it may not happen until game 40 or 50 or maybe not at all. We don't know. But if it does happen that way, that is the best case scenario for the Islanders. And then you get 15, 20, 25 possibly goals. I'm estimating it's going to be between 15 and 20 over the course of the season with a relatively slow start, and he'll pick his game up as the season goes on and he gets more comfortable. But we'll see. And he could start on the third line, and he could start on the fourth line once training camp gets underway. And once we see preseason games, I am going to be keeping an eye on where number 7 lines up, 7 being Maxim Tsyplakov. We're going to see how it all plays out, but I would love to see him on the second line. Wouldn't shock me if he starts the season on the third line and then moves up to the second line when and if he's ready to take on a little bit more responsibility and he's a little more comfortable playing for the Islanders and playing in the National Hockey League. We have got a lot more to get to on today's show. Obviously, the Ilya Sorokin situation remains a big question hanging over the head of this franchise right now, both short term and hopefully not going to be long term. But a former Islander has a little advice for Ilya Sorokin, someone who should know. The Islanders also announced their promotion dates, and we've got a very easy Islanders birthday of the day. The very first captain in New York Islanders history, and someone who was on the Islanders TV broadcast team for a long time after he retired as a player. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all of this and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at Game Time. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite events even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. My favorite feature on Game Time remains the view from your seat. You go on the app and you can see a panoramic view from the seat before you purchase the tickets. That way you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Just download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So, obviously, Ilya Sorokin, likely, according to the cryptic comments made by Lou Lamoriello, likely to miss the start of training camp. Not necessarily going to be ready for prime time. Hopefully going to be ready for the opening of the season. We'll see. Again, Lou Lamoriello, I don't know if he could be any vaguer, because one of the things he said was, we'll leave it up to our training staff and medical staff. Like, yeah, who would you leave it up to? A fortune teller on the side of the road? Obviously, it's going to be up to the medical staff and the training staff. But again, we don't know the exact timetable, and I don't think anybody at this point knows the exact timetable for Ilya Sorokin's return. Now, Rick DiPietro had some advice for Ilya Sorokin, as reported in the New York Post, and I thought this was good advice. And look, for those of you who may not remember, Rick DiPietro was signed in 2006 to a 15-year contract and then ended up with concussions, knee and hip injuries, and essentially his career came to a premature end. Obviously, the Islanders, Ilya Sorokin and Rick DiPietro, do not want to see a repeat of that. So here's what DiPietro said. He said, this is not one of those ones midway through the season, you're trying to get back because it's the playoff push. If I were to advise him, I would say get to 100%. The reason why you had whatever surgery was done was to get back to 100%, because once the season starts and you start grinding, as you start, that's the best you're going to feel the entire season. So I would say get back to 100%, focus on your body, focus on strengthening whatever the area is, all those muscles that are attached to where he got the work done. And then from there, once you take that out of the gym and all the physical therapy stuff, he's got his goalie coach here now. So do a lot of work with him. And then you take those steps to go from working with your goalie coach, seeing pucks, getting your timing right, to now all of a sudden incorporate more game-like stuff. Scrambles in front of the net that always were for me the hardest part. That's what took me the longest to get back when all those broken plays. You could try, but it's different. The amount of traffic and bumping and deflections, loose pucks and rebounds that you have during a game is tough to recreate in practice. So again, I think this is sound advice. And everydayers, you'll remember yesterday, I said the Islanders should be conservative with Ilya Sorokin. I would rather he miss time in October, if necessary, or even November, if necessary, rather than re-injure his back or cause, some other injury when he's compensating, or even to just have him shut down later in the season, or worst case scenario, a more serious injury. You don't want any of that to happen. So to me, two things. Number one, don't rush Ilya Sorokin back. That is the worst thing that you could do. The second thing is, and I would even go, this far, maybe for the first month, maybe more, maybe less, depending on how it all plays out. But maybe for that first month, you split the workload more evenly, or maybe even give Semyon Varlamov, 3 out of every 5 starts in October. You don't have a lot of back-to-back games. You have 2 back-to-backs in October. Don't rush it. This is an 8-year contract. First year of an 8-year deal for Ilya Sorokin. You want him healthy and playing at the highest possible level for all 8 seasons, if at all possible. So let's see, how this all plays out. But be conservative with this guy. I remember when Rick DiPietro was the Islanders goalie and he got hurt more times than we'd all care to remember. I remember a number of seasons where the Islanders started the season with Rick DiPietro or another veteran goalie in between the pipes, an injury struck, and by early November, the Islanders had, guys like Joey McDonald or Jan Denis in goal. And no offense to those guys, but they were very good AHL goalies, but, backup or fringe NHL goalies for most of their careers, their hockey careers. And the Islanders went on these long losing streaks in November. And by, American Thanksgiving in late November, you knew the Islanders weren't going to make the playoffs. You don't want that to happen again. You want to make sure that this team has the long-term interests of Ilya Sorokin and thereby also of the New York Islanders in mind. And hopefully you don't rush back, just like Rick DiPietro said. Take your time, better to wait another couple of days or week or whatever you need to do so you feel stronger and feel closer to 100%. And then you can bring your goalie back and gradually work him into the lineup. The beauty of having a quality number 2 goalie like Semyon Varlamov is that if you need him to start, you don't want him playing 55, 60 games a year if you don't have to, okay? But if you need him to play 40 this year or 45 because Ilya Sorokin isn't ready at the beginning of the season, so be it. Because you want your best goalie healthy and ready to go down the stretch and hopefully in the playoffs. If you're the New York Islanders, be cautious, be conservative. Do not rush Ilya Sorokin back. He'll be there, and hopefully he'll get healthy. We have our fingers crossed, and we will keep an eye on this situation all year long as it develops. All right, we have got more to get to. The Islanders announcing their promotion dates. We'll discuss that and which ones are my favorites. We also have our Islanders birthday of the day. All this and more still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by your friends at FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's number one sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you. Now through September 22nd, and time is running out, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's number one sportsbook. And in the meantime, hey, hockey futures are out there. You got the baseball season wrapping up, playoff races wrapping up. College and pro football, check out all the latest odds on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to download America's number one sportsbook. Thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. Now for your second listen, go find Locked On NHL, where the local experts keep you updated daily on all the biggest storylines ahead of the season. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So the Islanders have announced their promotional dates for the upcoming season. I always like these. They're always fun. Nice to get a little something more than just watching a hockey game. So here they are as of right now, and obviously there could be changes at some point during the season. Opening night, the home opener, Thursday, October 10th, 7:30, Utah Hockey Club coming to town. That will be the second ever game, I believe, for Utah, season opener for the Islanders. All fans will receive an Islanders scarf just in time for the weather to get cold. November 9th, that's a Saturday, right before Veterans Day. That's a game against the New Jersey Devils. It's Military Appreciation Night. And the first 10,000 fans will get an Islanders camo trucker hat. So that's always fun. November 23rd, that's a Saturday. Hockey Fights Cancer Night. So, that's always very, very good. It's a great cause. And, hopefully fans will rock lavender in support of Hockey Fights Cancer. And again, Anders Lee with the, Cancer Jam there that he always hosts and hosted it recently. He does a great job with that. January 16th, that's a Thursday, against the Philadelphia Flyers. It's Pride Night. The first 500 fans who purchase a special ticket will receive an Islanders Pride belt bag. Star Wars Night returns on Friday, January 24th against the Flyers. That's a 7:30 start. It'll be an Islanders Star Wars giveaway. Details still not finalized. On February 4th, the Vegas Golden Knights coming to town. It's First Responders Night. So we'll see what comes with that. Next Gen Day will be March 1st against the Nashville Predators. That's an afternoon matinee, perfect for celebrating young fans. Sparky and other mascots will be there for that. And then Go Green Night, March 20th at 7:30. Youth Hockey Day, March 22nd against Calgary. That's a 4 o'clock afternoon Saturday game. And then Fan Appreciation Night, April 15th, 8 o'clock p.m. against the Washington Capitals. Details still to come, but always fun, these giveaways, and hopefully you can catch at least one of them this season. Time now for our Islanders' birthday of the day, and this is a special one because, well, coming up on Thursday, it will be the 84th birthday of former Islanders winger Ed Westfall, the Belleville, Ontario native, 6'1", 197 pounds, broke into the NHL in 1961-62 with the Bruins, won 2 Stanley Cups with Boston in 1970 and 1972, one of the better penalty killers in the league then, and then joined the Islanders as their first captain in the expansion draft in 1972-73, stayed with the Islanders until 1978-79, won the Masterton Trophy in 1977, had a pair of 20-plus goal seasons with the Islanders in 74-75 and 75-76, finished his NHL career with 1,226 games, 231 goals, 394 assists, 625 points, add 22 goals, 59 points in 95 playoff games, retired after the 78-79 season, so didn't win a cup as a player, but was a broadcaster along with Jiggs McDonald for so many years, including some of those cup wins, and was, again, a big part of the Islanders family. Ed Westfall, a class act on and off the ice. One of his better games as an Islander, how about November 29th, 1975 at the Nassau Veterans Memorial Coliseum. Islanders facing the St. Louis Blues. Eddie Johnston, the future NHL coach and GM, the goalie for the Blues. Glenn Chico Resch is the goalie for the Islanders. And in this game, Ed Westfall opens the scoring midway through the first period on the power play. Jude Drouin and JP Parise with the assists. That makes it 1-0 Islanders. Then, with the score 2-0 Islanders, Westfall sets up JP Parise in the second period. Burt Marshall, the other assist. Then, later on in the third period, Eddie Westfall sets up Billy McMillan. And then a shorthanded goal he sets up for JP Parise. Islanders crushed the Blues by a score of 8-2. Ed Johnston chased from the game. Gilles Gratton finished up the final 5 minutes and change. Chico Resch with 23 saves. But for Ed Westfall, our Islanders' birthday of the day, he had a goal on his only shot on goal. He had 3 assists. That's a 4-point night for 18. He was a +3. Another 4-point night for Dennis Potvin, also a goal and 3 assists. And then 2 goals for JP Parise. So Ed Westfall, the classy first captain and then broadcaster of the New York Islanders, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day, everydayers. We are back tomorrow, which is also going to be the first day of training camp, so we will have some more previews about that. Real excited to get this season started. And we will be with you every step of the way throughout training camp with injury updates, line combinations, who's hot, who's not. We'll have it covered for you all year long here on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Until tomorrow, have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.